Okay, hello everybody. We are live. Welcome to Kabbalah Explained Simply. My name is Joseph. Hello everyone. We will be starting in just a few moments. If you're already joining, then show some love in the chat. Tell us where you're from. I can already see some viewers joining from a few places here on YouTube and Facebook. So yeah, let us know where you're from. If I'm looking this way, it means that I'm looking straight into the chat. Okay, so we're gonna start in just a moment. Okay, hey Patricia and Turbin and Julie and Timothy and Debbie and Sean and Tino and Sirius. Yeah, hi everybody. Okay, audio is peaking a little. We'll deal with that. There we go. This should be better now. Thank you for letting me know, Timothy. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Let's do this. The top 10 secrets of authentic Kabbalah. So what is gonna happen today? All right, so welcome to the top 10 secrets of authentic Kabbalah. This session is going to be jam-packed with content. We're going to cover a lot. We're going to go into Kabbalah's blueprint of creation. We're going to talk about the soul, reincarnations, the 10 Sefirot, the tree of life, the 5 spiritual worlds, free choice, the Hebrew letters, the Zohar, and Kabbalah's recipe for spiritual development. That is a lot. That is a lot. It's going to be a roller coaster, so make sure you're ready for this. Sit back and relax, but make sure you don't have any other disturbances in the background. I'm going to need your absolute focus. Top 10 secrets of authentic Kabbalah coming up. Okay, so as I said, this is going to be jam-packed with content. We're going to really run through it. And my goal is that by the end of this session, you will be able to, first of all, cut through all of the misconceptions about what Kabbalah is and what it isn't and what it really talks about. Get answers to some of the deepest and most puzzling questions that exist, and also gain a true and solid basis so you can access the time-tested method for spiritual development that is offered in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So that's where we're going today. If you are not familiar with me, my name is Joseph, and I'm a creative director and a senior instructor for KabU, which is the online learning center for authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. So let's dive in right away to secret number 1. Okay, so where did we come from and where are we headed? That's quite a big question, isn't it, right? Okay, so let's dive in. So secret number 1 is Kabbalah's 3-arrow model. Now, what this is essentially a breakdown of the whole of reality, the evolution of all of creation, into 3 parts. Pre-matter, everything that exists before the material world, and that includes before time itself. The material world and all the development that happens here for almost 14 billion years already, and post-matter, what we attain from this material world as we access the higher levels of spiritual attainment, of consciousness, non-material existence. Okay, so that's a lot. We're going to start to take it in bit by bit. So the first state of creation is, let's try to kind of symbolize it here. The first state of creation is a state where one desire is created. We typically signify this desire as a vessel. Let me just kind of make it a little clearer here. Okay, so this is the first state of creation. It's a vessel that is completely fulfilled. That is what creation is all about in the first state of creation. You can think about that state like the state of an embryo in a womb, right? We've all been there, by the way. We've all been at some point, we've been like an embryo in a womb. Now, if you think about the embryo's state of existence, it's a state where the embryo is surrounded by an environment that completely takes care of it, gives it whatever it needs, all of the nutrients and energy and all that it needs for its survival is provided to it. All that it doesn't need is taken away from it. There's essentially, if you want to look at it more emotionally, there's waves of warmth and love that are continuously enveloping that developing being, that fetus or embryo in a womb. But there's only one thing missing, right? And that is, if you think about your own experience, even though we were in that experience, we don't remember any of it, right? Why is that? Because we had no consciousness of it. And that essentially is the situation for the created being in this first state of existence. So we have a situation where the created being is found in a state of 100% unity, complete oneness. Creation is one, and it's a desire that is completely fulfilled by the force that created it, but it is unconscious. So let's call this first state in existence unconscious unity. Now, the issue is that because the created being has no consciousness, it has to exit the womb. So much like the embryo that has to develop in the womb and then grow outside of the womb, come out of it, exit it, the same thing or a similar thing happens with the created being. So the created being has to descend from that first state of creation through 125 degrees. And in these 125 degrees, let me just change the color here. Okay, so in these 125 degrees, the created being essentially descends from that state of complete unity, from that state of complete bonding with the force that fulfills it. And so it loses contact with that force. This is what happens here gradually, but also the vessel itself, the desire itself, the creation itself is being shattered into pieces. It becomes shattered pieces, myriad shattered pieces, instead of one desire that is in complete bonding with the force that created it. So no contact at all and complete shattering. And this last degree here marks the beginning of our material world. This is, in fact, what scientists, one second, let me just zoom in here a little bit so you see exactly what I'm talking about. This point here is what scientists will identify as the Big Bang, right? This explosion from which our material development began. It set in motion the creation and the expansion of the material universe. So this is where this happens. Let me actually just make this red here. All right. So where are we now? This begins the second state of creation, which is which is the second state of, let me just make this more clear. The second state of creation is all of our development in the material world. And so what happens here? Just to make sure that you see it. Okay, good. So what happens here? Here, on the surface, we see material development. However, creation is still a desire. The only thing that was created is a desire. And this desire continues to evolve. However, it appears to us here as matter. And so on the surface, we would see the development of the still level of existence, then the vegetative level, then the animate level, and then the human level. So on the surface, still vegetative, animate, and human, all these creatures begin to exist on a planet, in a universe, and so on. But behind the scenes or beneath the surface, the desire that is evolving is gradually becoming conscious. Remember, we had a desire here in the first state that was completely unconscious. It had to descend. It had to descend all the way down 125 degrees. And now it is beginning to evolve to a conscious state of existence, even though it is completely separated from that state of unity that it started from. Until we begin, we, as in the human level, the most evolved conscious level of the desire, begins to climb back up. Meaning, we begin to rise up the spiritual ladder. Let's make this point here, and let's put it here, yeah, and let's make it red and call it conscious awakening. So here we begin to climb back up the same 125 degrees. So it's the same spiritual ladder that has been created from above downwards. Now we rise through those 125 degrees from from below upwards. And so this takes us all the way to the third state of creation, which I will mark here. And so the third state of creation, if you are quick to think about it, is actually similar to the first state of creation, isn't it? It is essentially identical. Because when we start climbing back up the 125 degrees of spiritual ascent of the spiritual ladder, essentially we are rediscovering our connection with each other as a single created being and our connection with the governing force that created the desire that we are. So when we come to the third and final state of creation, we also achieve the same unity that existed in the first state of creation. Then you may ask, what's the difference then? Why the whole detour? If the third state and the first state are identical, then why the whole detour? And the answer, of course, is that creation now became conscious. And so now we have a situation where we can call it conscious unity. And for that independent consciousness of the created being, for this, let me just highlight it to make it abundantly clear. For this, the whole of creation was created. One second. There we go. So, yes. All right. Now look, there is a ton of questions. There is a ton of questions that you can ask about this 3-hour model. And obviously, this is broad strokes. This session is pretty much a crash course. So I'll stop it here and we'll move on to the next one. I will tell you that at the end, I will direct you to where you can find a mini course in Kabu that specifically elaborates on everything in this model. So without further ado, let's move on to secret number 2. So secret number 2 is this. What is the soul? How do we get in touch with it? What is the soul and how do we get in touch with it? Now look, we tend to think about the soul as some sort of an inner part that we have within us, something that has to do with our emotions, our maybe characteristics, our personal traits, our creativity, maybe our aspirations and goals in life. All right, so secret number 2 is the soul has nothing to do with any of the above. The soul is a sense or a device or a vessel that can perceive, that can sense the non-material reality, right? Let's go back to our drawing for just a second. So if we go back to where we were here, the vessel, the spiritual vessel that is called a soul, is the vessel that can perceive, that can receive and sense and experience everything that exists in here, above this axis of the material world, in those 125 degrees of non-material reality. That's what the soul is about. It's a vessel that can sense that. So the question that comes up from this is, of course, do we have a soul? Do you have a soul? Well, the answer is actually quite simple and very pragmatic. If you develop a soul, you have a soul. And if you don't, then you don't. Now look, I recognize that this might shatter some preconceptions that we might have even from childhood. But here's the thing. We all do have the beginning of the soul. We have the seed that, if planted in the right environment, it can grow into that vessel that can perceive and experience and live in the non-material reality. So the question to ask really is, what is that seed? How do we get in touch with our soul, right? And here I would just say, notice if you ever asked yourself the big questions, right? By the big questions, you know what I mean. The questions about the meaning and purpose of life. What is going on here? What is the purpose of all of this, of everything that exists? What is the meaning and purpose of my life? Is there a greater purpose than just spending 80 or 90 years in this world and working in some job and having a family maybe? And is there something grander, bigger, beyond what our eyes can see, beyond what our maybe even all 5 senses can experience? Is there a realm of reality that can actually answer all our questions about meaning and purpose? What is the purpose of the whole of existence? When these questions appear in us, that is when we get in touch with the seed that becomes the soul. We all have these questions within as human beings. If you're a human being, you have these questions somewhere deep down inside of you. It's just a question whether they have awakened, whether that point has awakened within you. And the funny thing is, we typically ask them as children. And we typically, as children, don't get the answers. And therefore, we kind of put it to sleep. And those in whom these questions don't go to sleep and they stay very much alive and kicking, they are the people in whom Kabbalists say the soul is beginning to develop. And that seed that it starts from, this is what Kabbalists call, let me actually go back to the drawing here, I'll show you here. So this point is what Kabbalists refer to as the point in the heart. This is because, let me zoom in for a second. This is because the heart in Kabbalah represents all of our desires. And the point in the heart is this desire that cannot be fulfilled on the level of this world. It cannot be fulfilled in this axis. This is why when you're asking what is the meaning and purpose of life, truthfully, you're actually asking about how can I climb back up to this level of existence, to this realm of experience, to the non-material reality. And so let me just highlight this a little bit. So, all right, that will be good for us. So when this awakens in the person, Kabbalists call this, like I said, the point in the heart. And they explain that all of these questions that we have, these big questions, they're not philosophical meanderings. They're not some theoretical, once in a while I think about this, maybe with a good friend over a beer or something like that. They explain that while we don't detect it, this is the beginning, this is the seed, this is the beginning of a unique desire that is developing in us. And if we will plant that seed in the right environment where it gets everything that it needs in order to grow, then it will become a desire that can actually experience the non-material reality. We just have to learn how to focus on it and begin to apply what it needs to it so that it can grow. This is what Kabbalists have been doing for millennia. This is essentially the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. That's the only thing it is truly designed for. And Kabbalists have devised an empirical method for how to develop that point. And I'm going to expand on this more in secret number 10. But for now, let's go on to the next one. Secret number 3. Secret number 3 is this: are reincarnations a real thing? And what happens when we die? All right, so reincarnations and what happens when we die. So look, here too, I got to start from the classic thinking, right? The classic thought is that we have a soul and it goes in and out of our body typically when we when we die. Then the soul comes out of the body. When we are born, then it goes into a new body. And once again, secret number 3 is it doesn't work that way. Okay, so look, you already know from secret number 2 that you don't have a soul unless you develop one, right? So what are reincarnations? So let's first remember that let's go back to our drawing. Why not? Let's first remember that only a desire was created. We want to understand what reincarnations are, right? So let's start from here. Only a desire was created. This is the sense. There we go. Now you can see the drawing. This is the sense, the sensor that will experience reality. And desire is the only thing that was created. So what are reincarnations? It's very simple. Reincarnations, to put it simply, are the evolutionary phases or cycles or states that the desire goes through until it reaches its final level of development here. So all of those phases and changes and cycles that the desire needs to go through are called reincarnations. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the with the experience that we refer to as our material body, which is a certain way in which we experience our desire on this level called the material world, on this level of perception. So how does this work? Let me add some more details into the picture here. Okay, so as the desire descended from the first state of creation to the second state of creation, as we already heard, it went through 125 degrees. All of those degrees of relationship with the light that used to fulfill it in full, and now it's being reduced and reduced and reduced all the way to zero. All of those states are now being encoded. They're being encoded into something that Kabbalists refer to as reshimo. This word is in Hebrew. I'll write it in 1 second. And what it means is essentially a list. Reshimo means comes from the word reshima, which means a list, or roshem, which impression, impression. And essentially it's the same thing. It's a list of impression from all of those 125 degrees that the desire went through from above downwards. And so this, yes, I'll add the text here. So this reshimo, which essentially means records. That's what it means, right? It means records. Let me add this word here just to make it clearer for you. So these records, this is like the spiritual DNA of the soul, if you will. This is essentially the database that represents all of the states that the desire or ultimately the soul needs to go through in order to reach its final level of development. Just like we have biological genes, there's also spiritual genetics. And so what happens then to the soul when we die? What happens to us when we die? Nothing happens, you guys. The body rots in the ground and we become worm food. But if we manage to develop the spiritual vessel, the soul, while we have the conscious opportunity in this zero state of existence that we begin our consciousness from, this level of existence called the material world, if we develop our soul and attain it, get in touch with it in an empirical way, this is called attainment in the wisdom of Kabbalah. If we attain to some level, even the slightest, smallest first degree of the first degree of the spiritual ladder, if we do that, we are already in touch with our existence here in the spiritual ladder. And then changing a body becomes, and I quote my teacher's teacher, the Rabash, a great Kabbalist from mostly the previous century. He said, changing the body is like changing a shirt. Because if you're connected to a higher level of existence, just like you don't, cry when you cut your nails, right? Because it's a lower level of existence that needs to go through a cycle and maturation, decline and death and rebirth and so on. And the same thing when you attain the soul, a higher level of consciousness, you identify with that, and then changing the body becomes like changing a shirt, unless you don't develop your soul, in which case the point in the heart begins to evolve through potentially many life cycles until you decide to make a conscious move and develop it into a soul. All right, this will take us into secret number 4, and that is, what are the 10 Sefirot and what is the tree of life? What are the 10 Sefirot? What is the tree of life? I know, you guys, that I'll just stop here for a moment here. I know that I'm running through this. This is a challenge in itself to go through all of these 10 secrets of authentic Kabbalah. But I think we're doing okay so far. So hopefully you're with me, and you manage to keep track. I hope it's not too fast, not too slow, and I'll keep going. All right. So secret number 4, what are the 10 Sefirot and what is the tree of life? First of all, it's basically the same thing. Essentially, it's a synonym. If you say the 10 Sefirot or you say the tree of life, you're basically saying the same thing. The term tree of life, at least in the context of Kabbalah, was popularized or was invented, conceived about 500 years ago by the Ari, one of the greatest Kabbalists, who wrote about 2,000 pages describing the structure of the 10 Sefirot and how they are the vessel to perceive the spiritual reality. And he called this composition Tree of Life. So essentially, it is the 10 Sefirot, the Tree of Life, one and the same. Now look, I'm sure that a lot of you have seen this diagram before, right? The diagram of the 10 Sefirot, the Tree of Life. And once again, unfortunately, there's if you go online and look for this, you will find all kinds of versions of this diagram rife with misinterpretation and sometimes with all kinds of materializations. And my recommendations, honestly, is to not look at those things at all, because it puts a visual in your mind that is just wrong, connecting this structure with all kinds of material depiction. And the truth is this: the 10 Sefirot have nothing to do with our corporeal experience, with our physical perception of the world. The 10 Sefirot, and this is secret number 4, it's very simple for you to get it now after the previous ones. It's the structure of the spiritual vessel. That's it. We talked about a soul. We talked about the point in the heart developing into a spiritual vessel that senses the non-material reality. That is what it's built from. It's built from 10 qualities called, let me show it to you here. One second. I have it here as well. There we go. So it's built, the spiritual vessel is built from these 10 qualities: Keter, Chokhmah, Binah, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. And as I began saying, all of this begins to develop from, once again, this point in the heart that if we learn how to develop it, well, that arrow is an overkill. I wanted something more like this. All right. So this let's make it a dotted line, kind of. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right. So I'm trying to demonstrate that this structure, the structure of the 10 Sefirot, evolves from this seed, this seed that needs to be planted in the right environment, called the point in the heart. This unique desire becomes the 10 Sefirot if we know how to develop it. And the 10 Sefirot are the structure of the spiritual vessel, nothing material. All right. On every level of the spiritual reality, every one of these 125 degrees, you will perceive reality through a vessel of 10 Sefirot. You cannot perceive reality, the spiritual reality, if not through these 10 qualities. That's how the spiritual reality, also called light, also called the quality of bestowal, right? Everything that exists here above the level of this world, everything in those 125 degrees can be referred to as light, or the quality of unconditional bestowal, the governing force of reality, the governing force of nature. That light can be perceived only through 10 qualities that are referred to as the 10 Sefirot. On every level, that's how it happens. Think about it just like our physical reality. We always perceive it through our 5 senses. It's actually exactly the same. Just like, you can be in London or in Berlin or in Hong Kong or in Tel Aviv, right? But wherever you go, you will experience it through those 5 senses. In the exact same way, whatever world you are in the spiritual reality, whatever degree you're in, you will experience it through the 10 Sefirot. All right, so Sefira. What's a Sefira? Now this should be even clearer. So Sefira essentially, let's write it, Sefira. Okay, so Sefira basically comes in Hebrew from the word sapir. Sapir means sapphire. Sapphire simply means luminous, something that shines. Something that shines. So that's where it comes from. And now you can understand that essentially, essentially what we're talking about is that these are layers of desire. Layers of desire, let me draw it like this, that have developed an intention that is similar to the spiritual reality, and therefore they can perceive the spiritual reality. Just like when a radio in our world, a radio receiver, generates a certain, in order to perceive some wavelength from outside, it has to generate the same wavelength within. And so a desire that has this intention that is similar to the spiritual light around it can now receive this light. I'll use the yellow here. Can now receive this light within, and therefore it's called that it shines. That's why Sefira, from the word sapir, which means luminous, shines. The 10 Sefirot, they all shine with light. Spiritual light, of course. All right, this will take us to the next secret, and this is secret number 5. What are the 5 spiritual worlds, and how do we access them? What are the 5 spiritual worlds? How do we access them? All right. I'll tell you right away. How about this? One second. I'll tell you right away. Here is my 3 arrows again. The 5 spiritual worlds, very simply, are these. There you go. The world of Adam Kadmon. I'll write the words in Hebrew as well. The world of Atzilut. The world of Bria. The world of Yetzirah. And the world of Asiya. Now, that's it. All right, these are obviously just names. We need to understand what are they. But first of all, it's important to make sure we all are clear on this, that all of these worlds have nothing to do with our world, including this. There's all kinds of misconceptions and confusions, including all of these 5 worlds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Adam, Kadmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. They're all above our world. Our world, the physical world, is here. Okay. So all of them are on the spiritual ladder. But what are they? And this takes us to actual secret number 5. Secret number 5 is very simple. World means concealment, because the meaning of the word in Hebrew, world, simply means olam. It comes from the word ha'alama, which means, again, concealment. That's literally what the word means. So when we say world, or when we say concealment, we mean the same thing. That's what it means in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So world is not some place that I go to, some space, right? We're talking about a reality that is above space and time to begin with. So a world is not a place that I go to. It is a level of concealment that I am at. Okay? So this means that all of these levels here are levels of concealment where the light gradually becomes completely concealed. So in the world of Adam Kadmon, the spiritual reality, the spiritual light is the least concealed. It's 100% revealed, let's say, in the vessel. Then in the world of Atzilut, it is more concealed. Then in the world of Bria, it is even more concealed, and so on until we go down through the spiritual ladder, through these 5 worlds, these 5 levels of concealment. And our world is a degree which is in total concealment. That's where we are. We're on a level of perception where the spiritual reality is completely hidden from us. We have no concept and no connection with anything that's happening above time and space, above the level of the material world. So the question that we should ask, of course, is how do we access these 5 spiritual worlds, right? How do we access these levels? So first, we need to understand exactly what has been concealed. What is concealed from us? So as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, we were created as a single desire. This single desire, also called the collective soul, the one created being that was created, the one creation that we all are, this single desire was gradually shattered. And so if in the beginning it is one desire that is filled with light, right? That's in the beginning. Let's say this is here in the world of Adam Kadmon. Gradually what happens is that this desire becomes, first of all, shattered. So let me kind of do it like this, maybe. Okay, I think this kind of makes the point. So here in these worlds, as we go down the spiritual ladder, basically what we have is a reality where the soul is more and more shattered, or the experience of the created being, more accurately, is one of more and more shatteredness, separateness. So let's say that on this level, there are still connections between all the pieces, but they are already pieces. They're no longer one, right? So this is like a network. And then the more we go down, let me just actually differently. The more we go down, we are talking about a reality that is more shattered until we reach the level of our world, which, remember, is total darkness, complete concealment. And in our world, what do we have? We have sparks of this collective souls, shreds. This is what we called before. Let me zoom in here for a second. This is what we called before these, let me use a different color here, the points in the hearts. So in this world, we no longer feel that we are one collective soul, one created being. We don't even feel that we are interconnected necessarily, right? We feel that we are separated individual beings, but we have a spark, we have this seed that senses the collective soul if it is developed. So entering the upper world, let me just kind of show that let's add some let's add some arrows here just to make things absolutely clear. So yeah, this will work. Okay, so all of these pieces, all of these sparks come from the collective soul, right? And we are those sparks. So in this world, we feel completely separated, and rising up the spiritual ladder, rising up the spiritual worlds, accessing the spiritual worlds means rediscovering the unity of the collective soul and the unity of the collective soul with the force that created it and fulfills it. So the more we rise up the spiritual level, the more we access higher spiritual worlds, the more we discover the oneness of all of existence, all of reality. Okay, let's move on to secret number 6. Do we have free choice, or is everything predetermined? Okay, so this question, if you look at the 3-arrow model, the question actually is a very serious question, because here you can see that we are going through a process, right, from above downwards. Then we develop in the material world. Then we go from below upwards. And there's a beginning point. There's an end point. There's all these states, these evolutionary states in between. Then where is free choice? Where is there any room for free choice? So here's how it works. From above downwards, all of those 125 degrees, through the Big Bang that set in motion the expansion of the material universe, through the development of still, vegetative, animate, and until this point, everything is automatic. All of this development happens directly from above downwards, it is called. But with the evolution of the human level of desire, the human level of nature, the human level of consciousness, here comes a unique opportunity for conscious participation in the process of development, in the process that is already predetermined. So secret number 6 is this. We do not have free choice when it comes to the path that we have to go through. But we do have free choice when it comes to how we experience it. And this is a subtle yet dramatic difference. This will be the whole difference between what Kabbalists call path, experiencing the whole process as a path of suffering, versus experiencing it as a path of light. And so what we're talking about is something that will change how we experience the process, because if we begin to learn about where we have to go through, what we have to go through, and where are we headed, where we're going, and we begin to consciously identify with the process, that becomes the difference on a global level between a world war and a development of peace and prosperity, and on a personal level between not knowing what is happening to you in life and where you're going and being depressed or all kinds of things like that, versus being in the director's seat as you go through your own life. And so this is a deep and profound thing, free choice, obviously. Kabbalist Bala Sulam, the preeminent Kabbalist of the previous generation, explained this in great detail over many pages in his article, The Freedom, but this is just broad strokes. So hopefully you'll be curious into finding out more details and look for it in the sources, which I will again mention later on what is the best way to do that. Okay, let's go to secret number 7. What is the secret of the Hebrew letters? What is the secret of the Hebrew letters? Now look, once again, misconceptions and misinterpretations. There's all kinds of commercially inclined Kabbalah centers that will tell you that if you look at the Hebrew letters, you will get some special powers or something along these lines. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. If you look at the Hebrew letters, no matter how hard you look at it with your corporeal eyes, you're just going to be more focused on the visual shape of a letter. That's it. The letters are symbols. They are visual symbols of spiritual states. More specifically, they are symbols of the relationship between the giving force, or the light, the force that fulfills the vessel, and the receiving force, which means the force of the created being, the nature of the kli. Kli means vessel in Kabbalah, the vessel that receives the light. And so all of the Hebrew letters, the 22 letters, they represent different relationships between giving and receiving, which is, again, the governing quality of nature and the governing quality of the created being. The different relationships between them give us different visual shapes. Let's look at an example how it works. So basically, vertical lines generally represents reception, and horizontal lines generally represent giving or bestowal. And if you take, let's say, for example, the letter Aleph, right? Let's make it a big one. Let's make a big Aleph. Big letter Aleph coming up. There we go. I think this is big enough. Yes, okay. So if you look at the letter Aleph, for example, then here what you have is one shape that represents a quality of bestowal that we will call here the quality of, whoa, that is way too big. 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, let me just replace this. Yeah. So this represents, this shape here, this top shape represents the quality of Bina. And this bottom shape here of the Aleph represents the quality of Malchut, which is a quality of reception. And also, actually, this line here in the middle, this diagonal line, represents a certain relationship between them. It represents, in this case, a separation between the qualities of bestowal and the qualities of reception, or Bina and Malchut. If you're interested, this is called, by the way, Parsa. So in any case, you get the idea. These letters are symbols of spiritual relationships between the quality of bestowal and the quality of reception. All the 22 letters, by the way, they all come they all come from the world of Atzilut, from here. This is the level of attainment required for the Kabbalists to be able to detail the relationships with the upper light and their spiritual vessel in those 22 visual shapes. Okay, now let's move on to secret number 8. We're at number 8 already. Okay, that's a good sign. We might actually be able to cover all of them. Okay, secret number 8. What is actually written in the Book of Zohar? What is truly written in the Book of Zohar? So look, the Zohar, on the one hand, many people have heard about it. It is a very known, world-renowned book. But how many people actually opened it? How many people actually tried to know what it's about? And so, on the one hand, people think, or there's this rumor, or they have an idea that the book talks about secrets of the universe, secrets of reality, some prophecies. On the other hand, it's so much shrouded and clouded in mystery that there's even fear from opening this book, fear from opening it and maybe learning things that you can't unlearn or something like that. Now, as you are starting to get used to in this session, here too, most of what you've heard about the Zohar is probably a misinterpretation. The Zohar only talks about spirituality. It only talks about spiritual states. It was written, let's go back to this diagram for a second. It was written by a 10, meaning a group of 10 people. 1 second. Let me actually just reload it so it's clear and sharp. Okay. So the Zohar was written by a group of people, a group of 10 people who achieved all of the levels of all of the degrees of the spiritual ladder. So they, between them, these 10 people, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait, you can't see it. Now you can see it. So those 10 people, the authors of the Zohar, they managed to create such a network between their desires that this network was essentially their collective spiritual vessel, their 10 Sefirot. They themselves were also 10, and they built a vessel of 10 Sefirot from their joint desires. And so with that powerful spiritual vessel, they managed to achieve all the degrees of the spiritual ladder, including the final correction, meaning the state of complete oneness that all of humanity achieves only at the end of the whole process. And so all the Zohar talks about is the spiritual degrees. The thing is this, and this is really secret number 8. The Zohar is written in coded language. The Zohar is written in coded language. Let me just show you how that works. So in the spiritual world, let me make a separating line here. In the spiritual world, this will be the spiritual world. There are no objects. You can't really see this too big, right? This is better probably. Okay, let me go back to my font here. Good. And let's make this a little bigger. Okay. So in the spiritual world, there are no objects. The spiritual world is a world of forces, a world of qualities, relationships, and lines of code that govern the behavior of the material world. In our world, however, right, in the physical world, we have all kinds of things, right? We have, let's put here a sun and a bee and a tree and a person and a house. Okay. think we get the idea. So we have all kinds of things in this world, and let me just, this stuff is way too big and not proportional, but we'll live with that. Okay, this is one big B. All right, you get the idea. So in the physical world, we have all kinds of things, physical objects. What Kabbalists do is they use words from this world to describe the spiritual world, because here is their problem. In the spiritual world here, it's not just that there are no things, there are also no words. There are no words because there are there's no physical expression. So how do you describe a world of feelings, a world of a sensation of the governing forces of reality that govern our world, but you have no word for them? So what do? So because of this unique relationship between the spiritual world and the physical world, because of this unique relationship, let me just make it like this. Okay, that will be good. So because there is a root for every thing that exists in our world, there is a spiritual root. Okay, so this is called roots, everything that exists here, and this is called branches. And so because they attain the roots, the Kabbalists, and they attain the unique relationship between the roots and the branches, they are therefore able to use the branches in order to indicate the roots. And so Kabbalists came up with languages that are coded in this following way. They are languages called their general language is called the language of roots and branches, which means again that they will say things like, if you open the Zohar, you can find all kinds of depictions about donkeys and rivers and people going through different terrains and finding different things and experiencing different situations that may seem very vivid, very visceral, very visual, very physically tangible. But they're actually using all these words in order to indicate the roots, which have no words. So they use the thing words to describe forces. And that is how all the true writings of Kabbalah that talk about the spiritual reality are actually written, because there are no words in the spiritual reality. Now, here's an important thing. Here's the thing. If you read it intellectually, if you read the Zohar intellectually, it's just confusing, right? Because you're trying to understand a language that you just can't possibly understand. But if you know what, let's just add it here. If you try instead, let's put this is the Book of Zohar, okay? Yes, let's say this is the Book of Zohar. So if you try to read it intellectually, you get confused. But if you approach it from your point in the heart, meaning the developing seed of your spiritual vessel, and you read it with what we call the right intention, meaning you're not trying to intellectually make sense of the words. You're trying to use the text as an elevator to take you from the level of this world to the true meaning of the words, which is the roots, the spiritual roots. Then the book becomes a device for you to rise into the spiritual world. Okay, obviously this requires more explanation, and generally it requires guidance and practice, and I'll talk more about it in secret number 10. Let's go to secret number 9. Okay, why was Kabbalah hidden for 2,000 years? Why was Kabbalah hidden for 2,000 years? And the secret is quite simple. Mostly because Kabbalah was purposely hidden. It was concealed by the Kabbalists themselves until who weren't 100% successful about it, by the way. But it was purposely concealed until humanity was ready. Here's how it works. Kabbalah begins 5,781 years ago. This is what we know of the time when the first Kabbalist emerged and began developing this method. Now, in parallel from that time, human society is developing as well. So since 5,781 years ago, you have the wisdom of Kabbalah developing in parallel to humanity. Now, 2,000 years ago, something special happens in the development of mankind. And the revelation of the wisdom of Kabbalah is intertwined with the development of human society. And so 2,000 years ago, Kabbalists identify that humanity is now entering the last stage of development of the human desire. They discovered that humanity is going to enter it, not that humanity already entered it in their time. And so what that development means, excuse me, but I'll draw once again just to make it more memorable. So again, if we look at our 3-arrow model, let me just make one quickly, right, and change the direction here. Okay. All right. So, and this should change direction as well. Okay. So what happens is this. Let me actually show it to you like this. All right. So from none. Okay. So 2,000 years ago, Kabbalists identify this, that what's going to happen is a dramatic rise of the human ego. That means, in short, without getting into all the details of it, this means, in short, that humanity is entering such a phase of development where disclosing the wisdom of Kabbalah before this level is complete, before humanity completes this development, would mean that it would be more harm than good. It would be misunderstood, misused, and the wisdom of Kabbalah, would just revealing it, publicizing it, would just do more harm than good. And that's why 2,000 years ago, and that's when the Zohar was written, by the way, Kabbalists themselves make efforts to hide the wisdom of Kabbalah for the time when humanity completes this stage of development and is globally ready. And that time is now. If you want to be very specific about it, then there we go. In 1995, Kabbalist Bala Sulam said, this is pretty much the time where humanity is globally ready for spiritual development. Interestingly, this is also pretty much the time when Kabbalah became extremely popular. And the fact is that even before that, a little bit before that, a little bit meaning already in the 16th century, basically, already here there was a big change, and Kabbalists already began to disclose the wisdom here. But it takes time, and 2,000 years combined with a coded language do their part, and that's why there's so much misconceptions, misinterpretations surrounding the true nature of the wisdom of Kabbalah. And the true nature is that if you have a point in the heart, this wisdom is for you. If you have a desire for spirituality, that's all you need in order to access this wisdom. And this takes us to secret number 10, the last one, which is, what is Kabbalah's recipe for spiritual development? So here we go. Kabbalah's recipe for spiritual development is actually this. This can probably be a good drawing for us to use. Or actually, let's do the same thing here. Right. So, Kabbalah's recipe for spiritual development. Look, it's very simple. You already know that all spiritual development begins from what we call the point in the heart, right? These guys here in the drawing. There we go. These guys here, right? The point in the heart. All spiritual development begins from that. Now, the point in the heart is like a seed, as we said. It has all of the genetic information, quote unquote, all of the spiritual DNA is already there. All of the future states of development are already there. All it's lacking is just like a seed. It lacks the sun, the nutrients, the water, everything that the seed needs in order to grow, a nutritious environment. So what is the nutritious environment for the point in the heart? And it has three components. Kabbalists break down all you need as an environment to plant your point in the heart. They break it down into three major things. Number one is you need an authentic guidance, authentic teaching. That is critical because otherwise you just won't read the wisdom correctly. There is, as we've already seen, so much mystery and misconception, mislinkage, and misinterpretation surrounding the wisdom of Kabbalah. And that's why there's such a thing as a teaching lineage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. For example, my teacher is Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman, and his teacher, he is the student and successor of the Rabash. That was his teacher, and the Rabash was the student and successor of Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag Bar Sulam, who was the one who wrote the commentary on the Book of Zohar, and so on. So if the teacher is not connected to an authentic teaching lineage, then you're just bound to make mistakes. That's number one. Number two is you need direct connection with the authentic sources. And why is that? Because the sources, as we've described a few minutes ago with the Book of Zohar, these source texts, they describe, let me add a book here. They describe, whoops, not this one. Okay, only this one. The Kabbalistic books, now you can see it as well. The Kabbalistic books, they describe these states of the spiritual reality, these states. And so if you use them correctly with the correct guidance, the book becomes an elevator for those states. So you have to read about the actual states that are in the spiritual world from some Kabbalists who already attained it. And the last part is other points in the hearts. And so when you combine all of these three together, when you combine all of this three, this is the recipe. What happens is that you have your point in the heart. This is you with your point in the heart, and it now has the correct guidance that it needs in order to approach reading about the spiritual states, its future states of development, and with the help of other points in the hearts, you can correctly envision and aim your desire to those spiritual states, because those spiritual states are about the connection between the points in the hearts, about the connection of the collective soul. So if you have other points in the hearts and you have sources that talk about the states of connection between those points in the hearts, and you have guidance that tells you how to read the book correctly and how to relate to the other points in the hearts, now you've turned these books into an elevator that raises you to the spiritual reality. Now you can draw from the spiritual reality what Kabbalists refer to as surrounding light, which means that from your own future states, remember the spiritual genetics is already there. All those future states of development already exist in potential in your point in the heart. So now it's just like pouring water or giving nutrients and energy and sunlight to your point in the heart so that it can develop. And that essentially, in a nutshell, is the whole recipe of spiritual development offered by the wisdom of Kabbalah. Now, you naturally should ask yourself, where do I find such an environment? Where do you get this environment? And this is exactly where I'm coming from. This is exactly what Kabbalah is for. Kabbalah is our online learning environment for the points in the hearts, for the points in the hearts who are interested in developing according to the authentic method of Kabbalah. It has everything you need for your point in the heart to grow in the most easy, accessible, convenient, step-by-step manner. That's what Kabbalah is exactly designed for. Inside, let me show you. Inside Kabbalah, what happens is you have these mini courses. Remember, I told you about a course that I mentioned that if you're interested in getting into details about the 3-arrow model that describes where we are from and where we're headed, this is a course, Standing on the Threshold, presented by our dear Tony Kosenek, senior instructor in Kabbalah. This is a course specifically about the 3-arrow model. This, for instance, is called Enter the Zohar. It's a course specifically about the Zohar and how to approach the Zohar, what's written in the Zohar, and how to use it as the device for spiritual attainment. And so, in addition to these mini courses on various topics, in Kabbalah, you will also find a structured learning path. So if you're serious about spiritual development and you want to be taken step by step into the method, into this empirical method of spiritual development, learn the sources and where it comes from, and advance in a very guided way, there's a structured learning path which consists of 4 different courses over 20 weeks, I believe. It's a serious process that is just an adventure. It's a journey that I haven't seen people who take that journey and they're not changed in many ways and only in positive ways. We also have in Kabbalah, we have live events. By the way, the event that's going to happen in a few minutes from now, I'm going to be doing a Q&A together with the managing director of Kabbalah, Gil Shir. We're going to do a live Q&A with our students that are already waiting a few minutes. Sorry for that. We're beyond our time a little bit. So there's weekly live events there as well. There's student forums. There's direct interactions with with us, the instructors. There's everything you need for your point in the heart to develop. Now, the reason the cost of becoming a Kabbalah member is so low, and it is ridiculously low, as you can see here, it costs $15 a month, or if you do an annual subscription, then it's even less, a little less than $10 a month. The reason the cost is low is simply because, look, our goal is to share the wisdom of Kabbalah with the world. In this world, we are a non-profit organization. There's no commercial purpose. Every dollar we bring in is translated into maintaining and growing Kabbalah so we can reach more people. That's it. And here is the best part. The best part is that there is, Rachel, can you put the link, please, in the description, in the chat, anywhere. Just put it anywhere. So in the chat, in the description, Rachel, who's helping me behind the scenes, will put a link to Kabbalah that gives you, that if you go to it now, you'll get to a page where you can access a free trial. This means that you get 14 days with unlimited access. We won't bill you. We won't charge you a dime. You can try it. And in day number 14, cancel, and we won't bill you at all, and no hard feelings also, because seriously, everything that we do in Kabyu is done with love towards those people with awakened point in the hearts that we identify with, because we're the same. We came to this wisdom just a few years before you. That's it. And so if you're interested, there's really no reason not to try this. There's really no reason not to try this. There's nothing to lose, and there's only what to gain. Give yourself this gift of the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. It will unlock a higher level in your life. Like we say here, it will raise your life to a whole other level of experience. So at least try it out. If you're interested, give that point in the heart that environment that it needs in order to grow. Thank you very much for being with me. This was a session that was slightly longer than usual. Thank you for bearing with me. If you are already a Kabyu student, then I will see you right now in about a minute in the Zoom session together with Gil Shear. We'll be answering questions and more. So I'll see you there. And if you're not a Kabyu member, then once again, the link is in the description or in the chat. I can't say more to recommend it. Don't miss out on an opportunity to grow your point in the heart. Thank you everyone for being with me. I hope you've enjoyed this crash course session with a lot of content, and hopefully you've gained from it. My name is Joseph, and this was Kabbalah Explained Simply. See you next time, and all the best.